Hello, everyone. This is not just a story. This is a memory someone might be living right now. If this touches you, please like the video and subscribe. Share your city and the hour you're watching this. Let's remind each other we are not invisible. Now turn off the lights, find a quiet space, and let's begin. Saturday. October sun spilled through the curtains like a soft warning. I was already awake before it reached the floorboards. You'd think that after 73 years, sleep would become easier. But for me, it never did. It wasn't pain that woke me, not the ache in my joints or the stiffness in my back. It was the silence. There's a kind of silence that presses against your chest, the kind that makes you feel like the world is quietly moving on without you. I had slept in the same bed for over 30 years, but for the last 10, I'd slept in only one half. Clive had taken the other half with him when he died. He didn't pack it in a suitcase, he didn't leave a note. He just left it hollow. I reached for the window to open it like I always did. Frankfurt was waking up. Bert the mailman shuffled along the sidewalk with letters clutched tight to his chest. Mrs. Hamilton's pug waddled beside her like a clumsy shadow. The Jenkins Bakery lit up its sign. The smell of fresh bread always reached me around 9 Surrey, but I could already imagine it. Same town, same rhythm, different faces. The mailman used to be Bert's father. Hamilton used to walk a cat. The Jenkins girl had braces and worked the register now she owned the place and had a baby of her own. Everyone moved forward. And me, I stayed put, a hardware store widow in a town that didn't need nails anymore. I turned from the window and stared at the dresser. A single envelope lay unopened, junk mail probably. A cruel reminder that the only letters that still came to me were bills or offers I never asked for. I made tea. My hands trembled slightly, pouring the water. Not from weakness, not yet, but from a quiet fear I refused to name. No one had called yet, but that wasn't surprising. It was my birthday, 73. No candles, no streamers, no squeals of grandchildren through the phone. Last year, Marilyn sent a card 3 days late. Patrick sent a happy birthday mom on Facebook. Edwin, he called. Not to wish me well, but to ask if I could help with his rent. That stereo system he bought on discount had drained his last paycheck. Still, I'd taken the call. Because I always do. Because it's what mothers do, we answer even when the voice on the other end only remembers us when it's convenient. I sliced a tomato. It was the last one. I cracked an egg, grated a bit of cheese. An omelet for one. My big birthday breakfast. Why not? As I stirred, I thought about Clive. Clive Talbot, my husband, my storm, my anchor in his better years. I met him when I was 18 at a school dance. He was 22, just back from the army. He had that look like he'd seen things but still believed in promises. I hadn't traveled farther than 2 towns over. He talked about Europe, about trains in the night and cigars in small alleys, and I drank it all in like a thirsty girl at her first well. 3 months later, we were married. A year later, Marilyn was born. Patrick followed, and then when I thought our hands were full, came Edwin, unplanned, unexpected, and for a long time, my favorite secret joy. But Clive changed. Whiskey crept in slowly like a leak under the door you don't notice until your socks are soaked. The omelet burned. I turned off the stove, the smell of scorched egg matching the pit in my chest. A burnt breakfast on a birthday. Fitting. I placed it on a chipped plate, the one with the fading blue flowers. We'd received the set for our 20th anniversary. The same year, Clive gave me a pearl brooch, the only time he remembered our anniversary without me prompting him. The phone rang. I jumped. My heart did too. Could it be? Hello, Mrs. Talbot. This is Janet from book club. I exhaled. Of course. Oh yes, Janet. I just wanted to let you know there's no meeting today. Margaret's down with the flu and Elizabeth's away at her daughter's. Oh, I replied. That was all I could say. The words sat heavy. Well, happy birthday, by the way. We remembered. Thank you, I said, and meant it, even if my voice didn't show it. We hung up, and the room was quiet again. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that makes you question if you ever made enough noise in the world to be missed when you're silent. I wandered to the living room and sat near the old photograph on the mantel. The five of us captured by someone's disposable camera on a park picnic day. Marilyn serious in pigtails, Patrick smiling with a missing tooth, Edwin chubby-cheeked and resting in my lap, Clive surprisingly sober arm around my shoulders, his laugh frozen in that moment. How many times had I replayed that day? I whispered toward the frame. What happened to us? The photograph, of course, didn't answer, but my heart did. We unraveled, slowly, silently, like a thread tugged by time. I didn't wash the breakfast plate right away. Sometimes I let things sit, not because I'm lazy, but because some objects deserve to rest too. That little plate had held more than food this morning. It had held the last vestiges of hope that maybe someone would remember, that maybe 73 mattered. Instead, it cooled beside the sink, like a memory going stale. I tied my robe tighter and walked to the hallway closet. The house creaked under my feet, not out of disrepair, but familiarity. This house knew my footsteps. It had memorized them long before any of my children did. Inside the closet, tucked between old sweaters and Clive's dusty winter coat, sat a battered cardboard box. I knew what was in it before I opened it. Drawings. Dozens of them, folded and faded, my children's art scrawled in wax crayons and washable markers. The corners curled with time. Some still smelled faintly of glue or kindergarten glue sticks. I pulled out one Edwin's. Bright colors, wild shapes, a sun that looked like an orange explosion. In the center, two stick figures, a tall one with long brown hair holding hands with a smaller one. The words underneath in shaky handwriting. My mom is the best. I held it against my chest. The paper crinkled fragile like my heart. When did that boy disappear? The one who drew me like a queen with sun rays around her head. I thought of the birthdays I used to plan dinosaur cakes for Patrick, rainbow cupcakes for Marilyn, and for Edwin always trains. He loved trains. I used to sit up late sewing buttons onto Halloween costumes. I learned how to make homemade frosting just so Marilyn wouldn't feel left out at school when other kids brought store-bought sweets. And now my children lived in other cities, other houses with other women and other obligations. And I was here. Not unloved, just unprioritized. It's a subtle kind of pain, that one. The pain of realizing you're no longer central in the lives you built from your own body. I tucked the drawing back into the box and stood up, knees cracking in rebellion. It was time for the laundry. Saturday was laundry day, always had been, even before Clive died. Some habits outlive the people who created them. I sorted clothes mechanically. My hands knew the motions. Socks here, whites there. The machine door squealed open like an old friend with bad knees. As the spin cycle hummed, I sat at the kitchen table and sipped tea again, this time lukewarm. I opened my journal, not the fancy kind, but one I'd kept for over a decade. Inside were small notes, things I'd given to my children over the years. Not gifts, but loans, help. March 2008. $500 for Edwin's car down payment. June 2010, $800 to Patrick for Olivia's birth expenses. October 2013, $2,000 to Marilyn for law exam prep repaid. April 2016, $3,600 to Edwin. Reason, he said, just trust me, Mom. I had written that part in quotation marks. Trust, a word that was starting to feel more like a currency I'd overspent. I traced the ink with my finger. There was no bitterness. Just math. Emotional math. Add love. Subtract disappointments. Divide yourself too many times, and you start forgetting how whole feels. The doorbell rang. For a moment, I thought, could it be... No, just the mail. A single envelope. No return address. My name handwritten in an unfamiliar scrawl. Inside a birthday card. A simple one. Floral border. The kind you find in a dollar store. It read, Happy 73rd. You probably don't know me, but you used to sell me nails at the hardware store. You always smiled and remembered my name. That meant a lot. I hope today you feel remembered too. Tony B. I sat back in the chair. Tony B., I remembered him now. Quiet man. Always bought the same size screws. Once asked if I could recommend a paint for his shed. He said thank you twice every time he left. I hadn't seen him in over 15 years. And yet here he was remembering me when my own children hadn't. I cried, but not because of sadness. It was something softer, like a salve over an old wound. Sometimes the kindness we scatter without thinking finds its way back. The washer buzzed. I stood wiping my cheeks with the sleeve of my robe. It was time to hang the laundry. Outside, the clothesline swayed gently. The breeze was cool, like October liked to be. I pegged each garment with the same precision I'd done for years. Clive's flannel shirt still lived in the bottom drawer untouched. I hung one not for use, but for memory. Behind me, the garden looked tired. Weeds had claimed what the roses had once ruled. The soil was dry, the lavender bushes thinning. I used to love gardening, but these days, I just didn't have the knees or the heart. The wind picked up and the shirt flapped like it was waving goodbye. I stood there gripping a clothespin, watching that shirt dance. "I miss you," I whispered, not to Clive, to myself, to the woman I used to be, the one who still had energy and plans and people who needed her. That's the hardest part of growing old. Not the loneliness, not even the fading health. It's the fading need, the realization that the world keeps spinning whether you get out of bed or not. I went back inside. The house was warm but felt colder than before. I sat down and turned on the television. The volume filled the silence but didn't replace it. Old movie, black and white, the kind Clive used to love. I watched without seeing, until the phone rang again. I blinked, reached and picked up. "Hello?" A pause. Then, "Mom." My breath caught. "Edwin." "Yeah, sorry to call so early, just got a moment free. Happy birthday, Mom." I didn't know whether to smile or brace myself. "Thank you, sweetheart. I have news," he said, his voice quick with excitement. I waited. "I'm coming to visit this weekend, and I'm bringing someone. Someone special." I closed my eyes. The roller coaster began. "Of course, darling, I'd love to see you." "Great. I'll tell you everything in person." And just like that, the line went dead. He never asked how I was, never asked what I was doing today, never asked if I was okay. But he was coming, and he was bringing someone. And that I knew was the beginning of something, not a celebration, a test. Saturday arrived wrapped in golden light. It was the kind of autumn morning that used to mean baking laughter, little shoes, tracking mud through the house. But this Saturday carried none of that. It was dressed in expectation, sharp and cold. I woke earlier than usual. Not from anticipation, but from habit. The kind of habit that mothers never quite outgrow preparing for the people you love, even when they've long stopped preparing for you. The house was clean. Immaculate, even. I had scrubbed every surface-polished silverware that hadn't seen daylight in a decade. The good tablecloth was unfolded, ironed, and laid with care. The brooch Clive once gave me pinned to my collar, lipstick, a soft touch of rouge, the armor of mothers who want to look well when everything inside aches. I baked Edwin's favorite apple pie. The smell filled the house, warm and deceitful. I made baked chicken potato salad, sliced bread from the bakery. It wasn't just lunch, it was hope served hot. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 onro. That alone startled me. Edwin was never early, not even on Christmas. I smoothed my dress and opened the door. There he stood. My boy. My little prince, now a man in a sleek suit. Too sleek, too pressed. The hug he gave me was full-bodied but not full-hearted. "Mom, you look great," he said, and it sounded rehearsed. Beside him stood her, tall, blonde, cool eyes that calculated before they blinked, a designer coat, soft perfume hands, manicured like a magazine ad. "Mrs. Talbot," she said, extending a slender hand. "I'm Priscilla Hart. It's so lovely to finally meet you." Her smile was correct, her tone cordial. But there was something behind her eyes I couldn't name yet. Not warmth, not kindness. Something more polished than that, like chrome cold, shiny, and indifferent. I stepped aside. "Come in, lunch is almost ready." As they entered, I watched Priscilla's gaze sweep across my living room. Her eyes paused on the old couch, the mismatched bookshelves, the photo frames and thrift store wood. "What a cozy home," she said, each syllable wrapped in satin and judgment. "Thank you," I replied. "Clive and I bought it 45 years ago. Clive is Edwin's father, she asked. I nodded. My late husband. Oh, a flicker of something surprised, maybe pity crossed her face. I'm sorry. It was 10 years ago, I said simply. No more explanation, no more stories. Why don't you show Priscilla around while I finish lunch? I said to Edwin, who looked visibly relieved by the offer. Sure, Mom. Come on, honey. Their footsteps echoed up the stairs while I stayed rooted in the kitchen. The pie cooled on the counter. The chicken steamed, and my heart, it waited. 15 minutes later, we were seated at the table. Priscilla's posture was perfect like a ballerina. She scooped the smallest portion of salad imaginable onto her plate. Everything looks delicious, Mrs. Talbot, she said, though her fork barely touched the food. Mama's the best cook in the world, Edwin chimed in cheerful. You have to try the apple pie. I'm gluten-free, she replied gently, but I'm sure it's wonderful. I watched Edwin's shoulders sag just slightly, my boy still bruised by little rejections. I tried to change the subject. How did you two meet? Edwin lit up. At work. I dropped a pile of papers. She helped me pick them up. Our hands touched, like a scene from a movie. I thought he was adorably clumsy, Priscilla added, her smile painted on. And it turned out we had so much in common, Edwin said. We love Italian food, Woody Allen films, traveling. I sipped my water. Edwin had never traveled farther than Michigan, but love makes us lie in flattering ways. And what do you do at the firm, Edwin, I asked, though I already knew. I'm the assistant client services manager, he said, inflating each syllable like a balloon. But my boss hinted at a promotion. Edwin is very promising, Priscilla added. For the first time, she almost sounded sincere. And I turned to her. You're the creative director. She nodded. I develop advertising campaigns for luxury brands, jewelry, couture, real estate. That sounds impressive, I offered. It is, she agreed. She sipped water from the glass like she'd trained for it. And how old are you, dear? I asked gently. 32. I did the math. She was 4 years older than Edwin. And are you two serious? They exchanged a look, one of those shared glances that held rehearsed choreography. Edwin reached for her hand. Actually, Mom, we're engaged. She extended her left hand, and the diamond that glinted was the size of a small guilt trip. My mouth went dry. Congratulations, I said. We're planning a spring wedding, Priscilla said. So soon. April 16th, she confirmed. Everything is already in motion. You're quick. When it's right, why wait? She said, smiling thinly. I reached for more salad just to keep my hands busy. And the venue, Golden Oaks Country Club. Priscilla beamed, overlooking the lake, private ballroom, orchids, a live band, fireworks. My fork paused midair. Sounds extravagant. It'll be the wedding of the season. Edwin grinned. 300 guests, Priscilla added with practiced nonchalance. 300, I echoed. You know that many people. Mostly colleagues and friends of Priscilla's, Edwin said. Important connections. And your dress, I asked. Custom Vera Wang, she replied. And Edwin, Tom Ford tuxedo, he said proudly. She picked it. The room spun slightly. The math began adding itself. Orchids, fireworks, designer gowns, a 5-tiered cake. I knew the ballpark this played in, and it wasn't anywhere near our neighborhood. Sounds expensive, I murmured. It's worth it, Priscilla said, for our future. Then came the question, the one wrapped in faux innocence and warm smiles. Actually, Mom, Edwin leaned forward. We were hoping you'd help us. My breath hitched. Help you? With the cost, he said. We thought you'd pay for it. I blinked. Edwin, I said, I don't have that kind of money. But the house is paid off, he said, as if it were Monopoly. You could take a loan against it. My pulse raced. You're asking me to risk my home. It's not a risk, he said. It's an investment. After the wedding, I'll make connections. I'll pay you back. My hands curled under the table. You've changed jobs 5 times in 3 years, I said softly. Forgive me if I don't find that reassuring. This time is different, he said, clinging to Priscilla's hand. She believes in me. I'm sure she does, I said. But $300,000 is not a favor, it's a life-altering sum. It's what mothers do, Edwin said, and there was a tinge of accusation in his voice. They help their children on the biggest day of their lives. My eyes burned, not by risking the roof over their heads. We'll find someone else, Priscilla said quietly. If you won't help, you won't be part of it. I looked at my son, the boy who once called me his hero, and all I saw was a man I didn't recognize. I stood, hands trembling. "I can offer something modest," I said. "Photographer. Flowers, maybe." Edwin stood too, face flushed. "You want us to have a second-rate wedding. I want you to have a real marriage," I said, "not a performance." "You're selfish," he hissed. I flinched, but didn't cry. Priscilla rose. "We should go." Edwin didn't look back as he walked out. I followed them to the door. "Edwin," I said, "please." He turned face cold. "You'll regret this." They got into the car. The tires whispered down the street like a closing chapter, and I stood on the porch. Not broken, not yet, but cut deeply, in a place that only mothers bleed. The wind that evening was soft, almost apologetic, as if the world itself felt guilty for what had just happened. I stood by the window long after Edwin's car had disappeared. The curtains billowed gently against my arm. My hand rested on the frame, fingers curled not from arthritis but from restraint. Rage is heavy, but sorrow is weightless. It floats until it suffocates. The table inside was still set for 3, chicken cooling, salad untouched. Edwin's favorite pie slowly collapsing in on itself like something once full, now deflating. I didn't clear the table. Not right away. Instead, I walked slowly to the armchair in the corner, the one I'd sat in for countless evenings with books, with memories, with silence. My knees protested. My heart did too. I sank down, folded my hands, and stared into the nothingness. I had raised 3 children. I had stretched every dollar. I had cooked, scrubbed, kissed, and whispered. I had held heads through fever and heartbreak. I had said yes when I wanted to say no. I had stayed when I could have left. I had folded dreams into lunchboxes and sent them into the world. And here I was, alone, at 73. After offering my whole life, all I was being asked to give now was my home. I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, I reached for the small leather notebook in the side drawer, the one where I recorded every dollar I'd ever loaned, not to hold my children accountable, but to remind myself that I had given, that I hadn't imagined it. I flipped to Edwin's pages, page after page, hundreds, thousands sometimes for rent, sometimes just until payday. And I remembered the night Clive had warned me. "You're turning him into a slacker," he'd said. Eyes glazed with whiskey, voice slurred but sharp. I had fired back, "I just want him to have more than we did." But what had that more become? Entitlement, disrespect, manipulation masked as affection. I closed the notebook. My hand rested on it like a gravestone. The phone rang. My heart jumped. Hope is stubborn even when it's tired. I answered. "Mom." His voice. Edwin's voice. The same boy who once whispered, "I love you," after bedtime stories. But now, that voice felt foreign. "I wanted to call. I've been thinking," he said. I waited. "I'm willing to give you another chance," he continued, "to help us, before we escalate things." The word lodged in my throat. Escalate. He exhaled sharply. "We'll have to take legal steps, Mom. You made a promise. When I was 16, remember? You said you'd pay for my wedding." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because grief sometimes sounds like disbelief. "You're threatening me with a memory." "It's a promise," he said. "No, Edwin," I replied, voice low. "It was a dream, a mother's wish, not a contract. I've talked to people," he said. "We could win. You're old, you forget things. We have witnesses." My stomach turned. The room swayed. "You're going to lie, in court." "Not lie, just remind people of what you said." "And if I don't give you the money—" Silence. Then in a voice sharp as glass, "Then don't expect help when you're sick, when you can't walk. Don't expect us to be there." I gripped the receiver so tightly it could have shattered. "Are you blackmailing me, Edwin?" "I'm telling you how the world works," he said. "You either help us now or you'll be on your own." The line went dead. I stood in the kitchen for what felt like hours. The apple pie was still on the counter. The silverware gleamed under the light like tiny mirrors, all reflecting back the same face. Mine, a woman alone, betrayed not by strangers but by her own blood. And that was when I cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just slow, steady tears down both cheeks, landing soundlessly on the tile. I didn't clean up the table that night. I didn't eat. I didn't move. I sat in that chair holding my own hands like they were the only hands I could still trust. In the morning, I packed away the pie. I washed the dishes. I made tea. The sun rose like it always did, indifferent. Later that day, the doorbell rang. A man in a suit, envelope in hand. Mrs. Talbot. Yes, you've been served. He handed me the paper. His face was blank professional. Probably didn't know what he was delivering, or maybe he did and just didn't care. I closed the door. I stood there reading the words through blurred vision. Plaintiffs, Edwin Talbot and Priscilla Hart. Defendant, Rowena Talbot. Charge breach of oral contract and infliction of emotional distress. I laughed again, this time bitter, short. They were suing me. My son was suing me. I sat on the couch clutching the paper like a bomb. I could have torn it, burned it, pretended it wasn't real, but I didn't. Instead, I picked up the phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in over a year. Marilyn Talbot. Her voice strong, confident, polished by years in courtrooms. Marilyn, I said. A pause. Mom. Her tone shifted, cautious, distant. I need your help, I whispered. Edwin is suing me. The silence was longer this time. What? For not paying for his wedding. More silence. Then I'll be on the next flight. I sank into the couch. The storm was coming. But I wasn't alone anymore. Not quite. The next morning arrived without grace. I moved like a ghost through the house, my joints stiff from a night of barely sleeping and too much thinking. I had always believed that heartbreak came with loud noises, slamming doors, shouting matches, bitter goodbyes. But no one tells you that the most painful betrayals come quietly. A phone call, an envelope, the kind of violence that doesn't bruise the skin, only the soul. But I wasn't going to fall apart, not this time. Not anymore. I dusted off the spare bedroom, changed the sheets, laid out clean towels. Marilyn was coming, my oldest, my quiet storm. She had always been the most distant, but also the sharpest. I hadn't seen her in 2 years, not since Christmas. Even then, she'd come late and left early, the tension between us, never quite broken, never quite healed. She had never forgiven me for staying with Clive. Not after all the yelling, the drinking, the silences that stretched like wire. But she was coming now. For me. At precisely 7:03 p.m., her flight landed. I stood at the gate, waiting dressed in my best coat, the navy one with pearl buttons that Clive once said made me look expensive. She emerged from the crowd, a wheeled suitcase in one hand, her phone in the other. Her posture was straight, her walk brisk. The woman my daughter had become was not the girl who once cried over scraped knees. She was steel. Mom, she said when she saw me, no warmth, but no coldness either. Just purpose. Marilyn, I said, surprised how small my voice sounded. She hugged me, quick, firm, efficient. You look tired, she said, pulling away, and thin. Well, it's been a week, in more ways than one. We drove home mostly in silence. She asked questions. I answered. What did Edwin say when, where, who else was present? At the house, she settled into the guest room, then came into the kitchen where I had laid out tea and crackers, all I could manage. She opened the manila envelope and read through the court documents like someone flipping through a magazine. Calm, detached. He really did it, she said flatly. Yes. She flipped another page, claiming breach of oral contract and emotional distress. He's asking for $300,000. I nodded. Do you have documentation of what you've given him over the years? I pointed to the little notebook I had brought into the kitchen. She opened it. 10 minutes passed in silence as she read, page by page, line by line. Her brows furrowed, her lips tightened. Over $120,000, she said finally, never repaid, and this is just what you recorded. I nodded again. I probably forgot some, especially in cash. She closed the notebook, leaned back in her chair, and folded her hands. We're going to file a countersuit. I blinked. A what? A counterclaim. For the full amount he owes you. But Marilyn, he's my son. Her voice didn't change. And he's suing his own mother. Your kindness has become his currency. I looked away. Mom, she said more gently, this isn't revenge, it's protection. If we let him walk into court unchallenged, you could lose more than just your savings. You could lose your dignity, and I won't let that happen. Something shifted in me then. Not loudly, not suddenly. like the slow turn of a door handle that's been rusted shut for years. It wasn't anger, it wasn't even sadness. It was resolve. The kind that women like me rarely get credited for. The kind that comes not from rebellion, but from survival. We worked through the night. Marilyn called in favors, drafted legal arguments, gathered bank statements. I found receipts, printed emails, even old texts from Edwin asking for money, each one ending with, "Love you, Mom," like a signature of shame. By 3 a.m., our case was built like a wall I never thought I'd need. At one point, she paused and looked at me. "I'm sorry it took this to bring me home," she said softly. I reached across the table, touched her hand. "I'm just glad you came." The next morning, we called Patrick. He was shocked, angry. He did what he said. I heard the sound of a chair scraping. Maybe he had stood up. "He sued you for not paying for a wedding. Is he out of his mind?" "He believes he's entitled," Marilyn said. "And he has a fiancé who believes it too." Patrick arrived the next day. His wife, Deary, brought the kids and a tray of lasagna. The house was full again. Laughter bounced in corners it hadn't touched in years. The kids ran through the hall. I hugged them tight, breathing in the scent of shampoo and youth. Miles, my oldest grandson, whispered, "Grandma, is Uncle Edwin in trouble?" I smiled sadly. "A little darling, but grown-up trouble. You don't need to worry." He nodded seriously. "Okay, but if you need backup, I've got a Nerf sword." I almost cried then. Not from sadness, from love. Pure, uncomplicated, undemanding love. That night, I wrote something in the back of my notebook. A sentence I hadn't expected to write. Maybe I wasn't a failure after all. The next morning, I mailed the counterclaim. It wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of remembrance. To remind myself and the world that kindness is not a blank check. And mothers, we break, but we also rise. Quietly, gracefully, and sometimes, when pushed hard enough, powerfully. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, the feeling. Everything inside seemed built to minimize softness. The marble was too polished, the walls too white, the chairs too hard. Even the voices echoed like they didn't belong to anyone. Marilyn walked 2 steps ahead of me, briefcase in hand, heels clicking like a metronome on the tiled floor. Patrick flanked my left. His tie was crooked. He never had much patience for formality, but his eyes stayed alert, watching every face. I hadn't seen Edwin or Priscilla yet. A small mercy. In the hallway, we passed lawyers, clerks, people crying, people pretending they weren't about to cry. And there I was, 73, wearing my navy blue dress and the brooch Clive gave me on our 25th anniversary. I had put my hair up just like I used to when I worked at the hardware store. The mirror had told me I looked neat, not elegant, not young, but capable. Marilyn led me into a small prep room. Inside, she laid out our documents, speaking in crisp, practiced tones. "The judge is known for being no-nonsense," she said. "Don't let Edwin bait you. Answer clearly. Don't over-explain." I nodded, though my palms were damp. "I trust you," I said. She looked up. There it was, the flicker of emotion. She didn't smile, but her mouth softened. "We've got this, Mom." She didn't say it as reassurance. She said it like a vow. 10 minutes later, we were called in. The courtroom was small, intimate almost, like a family dinner table with witnesses. Edwin sat on the far bench. His suit was newer than I remembered. His hair slicked back, too shiny under the overhead lights. Priscilla sat beside him, legs crossed, nails, perfect expression, unreadable. He didn't look at me. I didn't look away. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Her name was Judge Brennan. Late 50s, silver-streaked hair, no-nonsense glasses. She looked like the type who read novels about war and raised sons who feared disappointing her. The case began. Edwin's lawyer, a man named Rick Withers, all shiny cufflinks and cheap charm, presented their claim. He called it a matter of principle. Said there had been an oral agreement. Referenced emotional duress due to broken parental promises. I felt like I was watching a play where the villain wore my son's face. Then Marilyn stood, and my daughter became fire. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't pace the room. She simply walked the judge through every documented loan, every message, every favor, every time I had said yes when I should have said no. She gave, Marilyn said, holding up the notebook like a holy text. For decades, quietly, without condition. Now they seek to turn love into liability. The judge asked questions. Marilyn answered. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly. My knees ached. My voice trembled at first. I never promised $300,000, I said. I promised love. I promised support. I kept those promises. And what about your comment that you'd pay for Edwin's wedding, Rick Withers asked. I said I hoped to, back when he was 16 and thought marriage was dancing in the kitchen and pizza on Sunday nights, not chandeliers and Vera Wang. The courtroom chuckled softly. Do you feel you've done enough, Mrs. Talbot? The judge asked. I looked at Edwin then, really looked at him. He shifted under my gaze. I loved him the best way I knew how, I said, even when it hurt, even when he didn't deserve it. Then I turned back to the judge. And I still do, but I won't pay to be punished for it. The room fell still. Edwin's lawyer rested. Judge Brennan called a recess. I stepped outside into the hallway, lungs desperate for air. Edwin followed. Mom. I turned. It was the first time he'd spoken to me directly since the lawsuit began. You humiliated me, he said. I blinked. You sued me. His jaw tensed. You made me look like a fool. I didn't need to, I replied. You did that all by yourself. His eyes flared. You think you're the victim? I didn't answer. Because I wasn't. Not anymore. You think Marilyn's so noble she disappeared for years? She came back, I said, when it mattered. Why now? Why suddenly care? I looked at him, the man who used to draw sons on birthday cards, and I didn't see malice. I saw fear. Because beneath all that entitlement was a boy who had never grown out of needing someone else to save him. And I wouldn't do it anymore. You know, I said quietly, I'd give you my last breath if I thought it would teach you how to breathe on your own. But I won't give you my home, because that's where I finally remembered who I am. His mouth opened, then shut. Priscilla emerged then. We're leaving, she said. She didn't look at me. Call me when you're done being pathetic, she told him, walking away. Edwin stood frozen. Mom, he said again. I touched his arm gently. Grow up, Edwin, I said. Before the cost of who you are becomes permanent. I turned. I walked away. That night, the judge ruled in our favor. Case dismissed. Counterclaim pending. I didn't celebrate. I just made tea. Marilyn and Patrick joined me at the table. We didn't toast. We didn't cheer. We just sat together. And sometimes that's the most profound victory of all. The weeks after the court ruling were quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the uncertain kind. Like a lake frozen too fast, brittle and uneasy beneath your feet. Edwin didn't call. Priscilla vanished. And the media, they had a field day. It started small, a local column about a mother sued by her own son for refusing to fund a lavish wedding. Then the story grew teeth. National blogs picked it up. Morning talk shows debated it. People argued online. She should have just helped. He's her child. She did more than enough. He's a grown man. Parents owe their kids everything. No, they don't, especially not their dignity. And there I was, just a woman who once made apple pie on Sundays, caught in the middle of a moral firestorm. But something strange began to happen. Letters started arriving, handwritten ones, emails too, from strangers, mothers, fathers, even adult children who wanted to apologize to parents they had pushed too far. One letter read, Mrs. Talbot, I watched your story. I cried. I'm sorry for how I treated my mother when she said no. She passed away last year. I never got to say thank you, but today I'll say it to you. Thank you for reminding us all what love really looks like. Gina L. 42, Denver. I read that one 3 times. Then I placed it inside a small wooden box on my dresser, a new box I had bought for one reason, to collect the kindness I never expected. Each day more came. Postcards, flowers, even a box of tea from a woman in Vermont who wrote, You sound like someone who still takes their tea warm, not rushed. She was right. I did. One morning I walked to the mailbox and found a small envelope, no return address, inside a check, $2,000, and a note. For the pie you made that no one ate. Someone should pay for that kind of heartbreak. I didn't cash it. I never intended to. But I placed it in the box, a symbol of unseen love returning home. Marilyn stayed with me for 2 more weeks. In that time, we did something we hadn't done in years. We talked, not just about the case, but about everything that came before. Why did you stay with Dad so long? She asked one evening as we shelled peas on the porch. Because I was afraid, I said. Of him. Of being alone. She nodded. I always thought you were stronger than that. I wasn't, I admitted. But I became stronger because I had to be. She looked down at the peas. I hated you for a long time. I know, I said. I thought you loved him more than us. I didn't, I said gently, but I was too tired to prove it. A breeze passed through the porch. The air smelled like wet grass and soil. I don't hate you anymore, she said. And that was enough. Patrick came by often. His wife Diary brought books and puzzles. The children played in the yard chasing light. The house had never felt so full, but there was still an ache, a shape missing from the noise. Edwin. One night I dreamed of him. He was 7 again, running down the hallway in socks, laughing, holding a plastic sword, climbing into my bed when thunder scared him. When I woke, my pillow was damp. A few days later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked through the curtain. It was Edwin, alone. I opened the door before he could knock. He looked worn, not broken, just weathered in ways pride couldn't hide. Hi, he said. I nodded, hi. He held up a small brown bag. I brought pie, apple. I didn't speak. I used your recipe, sort of. Still nothing. I wanted to apologize. He waited. When I didn't respond, he continued. I was wrong about everything. I was angry at the world and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that. My throat tightened. I've been in therapy, he said. Priscilla's gone. She left when the money stopped coming. I nodded. That makes sense. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, but I miss you. I miss this place. I miss being someone you were proud of. I looked down, then back up. Edwin, I said softly, I was always proud of who you could become. But lately, I didn't recognize you. I know. He stepped forward slowly. Can I come in? I hesitated, then opened the door wider. He stepped inside, looking around like a man entering a memory. The kitchen was warm. The air smelled of cinnamon. I pointed to the pie. We'll see if it tastes right. He smiled. Probably not. I sat. He sat. We ate in silence for a while. Then he looked at me, eyes red. I want to make it right. I want to repay what I took. Not just money, time, respect, trust. You can't repay time, I said, but I can honor it. And maybe that was enough. We didn't solve everything that day, but we started. Sometimes healing doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it just knocks softly on a familiar door and brings pie. That fall, the leaves came late. Usually by mid-October, the yard would be littered in gold and rust and fire. But this year, everything clung tighter than usual, as if the trees themselves weren't quite ready to let go. Neither was I. But I had learned something in those quiet weeks after Edwin's return. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means forgiving yourself for holding on so long. Edwin came by twice a week after that, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with nothing at all. He'd sit with me while I folded laundry or worked on the garden. We didn't talk about the lawsuit. We didn't talk about Priscilla. We didn't talk about money. We talked about tomatoes, about how the soil needed more calcium, about how his back hurt from hauling mulch, about how Miles was doing in Little League. One afternoon, I caught him fixing the loose porch railing. No announcement, no drama, just him with a screwdriver humming a tune I recognized from when he was 12. That day, I brought out lemonade. He didn't say thank you, but he smiled. And that was enough. Marilyn returned to her city, but not without promises. I'll call every Sunday, she said, holding my hand in both of hers. And next summer, you're coming to stay. I've already cleared the guest room. I laughed. You'll regret that by day 2. She smiled. Maybe, but it'll be worth it. Patrick stayed close too. He started inviting me to dinner once a week. Deary cooked. The kids always save me the best chair. I don't know what shifted, he said one night as he poured wine, but it feels like we're a family again. And I, for once, didn't flinch at the word, because we were. Not perfect, not even whole, but stitched together by something that had survived the tear. One morning, Edwin showed up with an envelope. I know you don't care about this, he said awkwardly, but I started a repayment plan. I looked at the envelope. A check. $300. Every month, he said. It's not much, but it's a start. I nodded. Keep the check. He looked confused. Just bring pie next time, I said. He laughed. Deal. That weekend, I opened the closet in the hallway, the one with the box of drawings, the closet I hadn't touched in months. I sat on the floor, pulled out the box, and began sorting. I set aside the ones I wanted to frame not for nostalgia, but for celebration, because those scribbled suns and stick figures had survived something too. They'd seen the worst of us and still smiled back. I took one of Edwin's old drawings and pinned it to the fridge. It was the one with the words, "My mom is the best." I didn't put it there to forgive him. I put it there to remind myself that even when people forget who you are, you don't have to. A week later, I received another letter. This time, not from a stranger. It was from Priscilla. I recognized the handwriting, still sharp, still cold. I opened it slowly, bracing for venom. But it wasn't that. It was regret. Half-hearted yes, but present. I was raised to think love is transactional. I saw your kindness as weakness. That was my failure, not yours. Edwin is trying. I hope you'll let him. P. I read it twice, then tucked it away in the wooden box. Not because I believe she'd changed, but because sometimes even a shadow deserves a place in your story, if only as contrast. Winter came early, frost on the windows, but the house was warm. I baked more. I laughed more. I even joined a local book club, though I rarely finished the assigned chapters. Life became smaller, but richer. One snowy afternoon, Edwin came over with a small gift bag. No occasion, he said. Inside a tiny ceramic train. Hand-painted, slightly crooked. Made it at a local class, he mumbled. Thought you'd like it. I held it gently. He watched me. I remember the train cake, he said softly. You stayed up all night to get the wheels right. I remember, I whispered. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me. Not a polite hug, a real one. The kind sons forget how to give until life breaks them open again. I hugged back. And in that small moment, I knew. Some bridges don't burn. They just get buried until you're brave enough to dig. Spring returned like a long-lost friend, hesitantly at first, then all at once. The daffodils I thought hadn't survived the frost came bursting through the soil with more color than I remembered planting. Maybe they'd just been waiting for permission. Maybe I had too. It had been 6 months since the lawsuit. 6 months since the headlines. 6 months since Edwin had walked back into my kitchen with a pie and a quiet apology. And everything had changed. Not in a dramatic way, not the kind of change that makes newspaper stories or holiday miracles, but in the small, stubborn ways that matter most. The porch railing was fixed. The garden was weeded. The attic had been cleaned for the first time in a decade. There were shoes by the front door again, Edwin's. He didn't live here, not exactly, but some days it felt like he did. He came by with groceries, with tools, with questions about plants or taxes or how I got the tomato sauce just right. He didn't say much at first, but lately he'd started telling stories about his job, his therapy, the ways he was trying to unlearn what had been taught by a world that valued profit over people. I still feel like I'm making up for something I can't name, he said once, watching the steam rise from his coffee. You are, I said. But you're also becoming someone who doesn't need to anymore. He looked at me, eyes a little glassy. You forgive me. I smiled. I'm your mother. Forgiving is what I do. But trust that you'll have to keep earning. He nodded. That's fair. And it was. That spring, I started something new. A small class at the local community center, Financial Resilience for Women, mostly older women, widows, divorcees, a few who just wanted to understand their worth in dollars and cents. I told them my story, not the court version, not the tabloid version, the real one. And when I did, hands reached out, eyes welled, shoulders straightened. One woman, Darlene, stood up at the end of class and said, "You reminded me that we're allowed to take up space." That stuck with me. For years, I had tried to make myself small, less needy, less noisy, less of a burden. But now, I wanted to grow. I even started journaling again. Not about others, about me. My thoughts, my anger, my hope. I wrote things like, there's no age limit on becoming who you needed when you were younger. And letting go isn't giving up. It's giving grace to yourself. One morning, I found Edwin in the kitchen flipping through one of my journals. He looked up embarrassed. I was just, "It's okay," I said. He tapped one page. This line, I walked over and read it. You don't need to be someone's hero, just don't be the reason they bleed. I wish I'd understood that sooner, he said. I placed my hand on his shoulder. You understand it now. That's what counts. That weekend, the whole family came over. Patrick brought steaks. Marilyn arrived with a big salad and her sharp wit. The grandkids ran through the yard like it had never known silence. Even Edwin helped on the grill badly, but with effort. And in the middle of it all, I stood back and just watched. Not with sorrow, not with fear of what might break again, but with awe. Because this imperfect, noisy healing mess was life continuing. Not despite the cracks, but through them. At one point, Marilyn came up beside me. You okay? She asked. More than I said. She handed me a glass of wine. To endings, she said, and beginnings, I added. We clinked glasses. The sun set slow that night, as if it didn't want to miss a second. Later, after everyone had left and the house was quiet again, I sat on the porch with Edwin. He turned to me, something on his mind. I was thinking, he said, about moving back. Not into the house, I know you need your space, but nearby. Maybe the apartment complex a few blocks down. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Yeah, I want to be close. Not to rely on you, just to rebuild. I nodded. You'd be welcome. But only if it's for you, not guilt. He smiled. It's not guilt, it's gratitude. And I believed him. That night, I went inside and opened the window in the guest room. Let the breeze in. Let the world in. And for the first time in years, I went to bed not wondering what might be taken from me next, but what I might grow next. Because some things don't bloom until they're no longer afraid. And I was finally done being afraid. There's a moment, if you're lucky, when the noise finally settles. Not because the world has gone quiet, but because you have. Because your body no longer flinches at footsteps. Because your name doesn't feel like a warning in someone else's mouth. Because your story is no longer a secret you apologize for. That moment came for me on a Tuesday. Ordinary by all accounts. A breeze through the curtains, tea cooling on the table, the mail stacked neatly by the door. But in that stillness, I felt it. Peace. Not the kind someone gives you. The kind you grow slowly, stubbornly from the wreckage of what tried to bury you. That morning, I received a package from Gina, the woman from Denver, who'd written months ago. Inside a hand-bound book, on the cover in gold ink, the words, Letters to the Mother Who Said No. It was filled with messages from people across the country, across oceans. Stories of parents who'd finally found their voices. Of children who'd learned to say thank you. Of families stitched back together not by money or obligation, but by truth. On the inside jacket, a note. You taught us how to say no with grace, how to love without surrendering ourselves. This is for you, for all of us. Gee, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time I felt seen. Not as a cautionary tale, but as a compass. Later that week, I was invited to speak at a conference, Elder Care and Financial Justice. I almost said no. I was just a woman with a journal and a stubborn garden. But Marilyn convinced me. You're not just someone who survived, she said. You're someone who taught the rest of us how. So I stood before 200 strangers' palms, sweating, heart-pounding. And I told them the truth. That I gave too much for too long, that I confused love with sacrifice, that I let people take pieces of me because I thought that was the price of being needed. But I also told them this. You are allowed to outgrow your own silence. You are allowed to say no without guilt. You are allowed to be the hero of your story, even if it starts on page 70. There was silence. Then applause, tears. A standing ovation I didn't expect. But even more than that, women who came up to me afterward, hands trembling, saying, I thought I was the only one. You gave me permission. I'm going home to change everything. Weeks passed. I returned to my garden, to the quiet, to Edwin, who now lived just down the block and came by every Sunday with bagels and that same crooked smile he had when he was 12. One morning, he brought something new. Thought you should have this, he said, handing me a framed photo. It was me from the conference, on stage, hands outstretched, mid-sentence, strong, alive. I hung it in the hallway, next to the crayon drawing that said, My mom is the best, because now both were true. Months later, a neighbor, young, tired, overwhelmed, knocked on my door. "I heard what you do," she said, "and I don't know who else to talk to." I made her tea, listened, didn't offer solutions, just presence. And before she left, I gave her a small stone from my garden etched with a single phrase I had started carving into everything I could. "You are not a burden." She cried. I did too. That phrase became a movement. People started writing it on benches, on bathroom mirrors, on the back of receipts they tucked into tip jars. And I somehow became a voice. Not a loud one, not a famous one, but a voice strong enough to be heard by those who'd been told they were too much, too old, too broken, too late. One night, Edwin asked me, "Do you ever regret anything?" I thought for a long moment. "Yes," I said. "I regret not learning sooner that saying yes to myself doesn't mean I've said no to love." He nodded. That Christmas, the whole family came. Marilyn, Patrick, the grandkids, even Dearie with her perfect pies. We laughed, ate, sang. And when it was time to open gifts, Edwin handed me a box. Inside a simple necklace. One word etched into the pendant. "Begin." I looked at him confused. He smiled. "You said you felt like life started again at 73, he said. "So, begin." And I did. I started a podcast, wrote a book, became the woman I wish my younger self had met. And when people asked why I told them, because I finally knew. I was not a burden. I was the beginning.